Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode. We're going to get right into it here and try to get going as quickly as possible. So, we're going to kick off, as we always do, with a little Star Trek Picard. Um, this week's episode was Nepenthe. Nepenthe, another strange planet word. And I know it's a problem because I watched the Ready Room after I watched the episode.
I haven't
and
bothered.
and nobody on there could actually say the name of the episode.
That's the best.
Will Wheaton couldn't say it, and Frakes had problems with it, and then Spiner didn't even try it. So it was it's one of those weird. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well. So we took a little bit of a sidestep this week. It was I didn't hate it. It was okay. There were hints of Star Trek in this, small hints of Star Trek in this, which I did actually kind of like. But overall, it felt a little bit bland, which is weird.
It's weird. I didn't catch the name of the writer for this episode, but they seem to have just written based on not liking every other new character.
Yeah, yeah.
It was amazing.
It felt almost disconnected from the rest of Picard up to this point. It's one of those episodes where it feels like a whole different team worked on it.
Yeah.
Within a scope of show, not like a different director or like a different writer, but like a whole different everything, because
A whole different team that probably should have a show of their own.
yeah, probably it was strange. So right off the bat,
Yeah. It's the best.
I'm already getting confused about character motivations on this ship together, because there's a lot of, we haven't seen these people for a long time. It's only been a few episodes, but already I think this was the first main episode where their motivations and their characters that they've been building to kind of swerve hard left for a little bit. Just like take a detour in. Why would you do that, Bill? So when we opened up, it's another flashback, right? Because that's what this series loves to do, is going back to 13 years ago. But in this sense,
Is Anne Rice on the writing
I
team?
don't know.
I remember a teacher of mine saying, if there's anything Anne Rice loves, it's flashbacks.
It's flashbacks. This show loves to do flashbacks, and actually, I'll touch on that a little bit later in terms of the writing for this show and this episode in particular. But it does love to do flashbacks, and this is after the intro, which is last time on Star Trek Picard, right?
Yeah.
Last time on Star Trek Picard, like the two-parter episodes you get on TNG, and then after you got a flashback of what happened last week, you go into the flashback for this week. It gets a little much, but we go back to the Daystrom Institute where Aggie was meeting with Commodore O, cool sunglass Vulcan, who I guess I'll talk about the Radio Room again. Jonathan Frakes noted how cool that was that she was wearing shades, and how different and unique. And I'm just like, You have all this future tech and you just have sunglasses. It seems strange. Ray-Bans,
especially on a supposed Vulcan.
On a supposed Vulcan, maybe on like, I could see like a cool independent human or something that just isn't part of the Federation or something have sunglasses working.
I don't know, maybe our pilot guy.
Like if Rios had sunglasses, I'd joke about it, but I'd be like, yeah, that's a cool guy move, right?
Yeah.
It's more totally so something you wouldn't see as a captain in Starfleet. Guy lighting up a cigar, and it's got sunglasses on at night. So it starts off with Aggie and O, and it kind of goes into that story that we talked about, how the Aggie character is a real mess. We really touched upon it, I think, last week.
Oh, yeah.
How she is, and I'm not saying like it's bad acting or anything. I think she's fantastic. It's just she is written 800 different ways depending on the episode, right? She came onto the ship as super upbeat and excited and happy to be traveling in space. But the week before, we saw her talking to Picard and murder a person and like lose her shit. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw her kill Maddox, who she was her lover and friend.
Yeah.
And then last week we talked about, well, is she like an insider spy? Is she a double agent? all over the place. And then this week, we kind of find out what happened. So that extended scene has Commodore O talking to Aggie and saying, look, Picard's going up to do some shit when we want you to be there to keep an eye on him, right?
Yeah.
And that part made sense. That aligned with what we were talking about before, saying, okay, maybe she doesn't know what's going on or doesn't know that she's being used, but is being there set up to, feed information to the Commodore. Because that would make perfect sense from a scientist point of view, right?
Yeah.
They're part of the Federation. She doesn't know any better, right? She assumes that it's Starfleet. Everyone's got to be good. These people are good. So she's saying, hey, and Commodore words it perfectly. She's like, we want you to go and just monitor Picard because we think he's going to get into some shit, right? Yeah. We just want you there. I'm like, cool, awesome. We get explanation of character. That's great. It should have ended there. Didn't end there.
No.
That writing wise, it should have stopped there. And then it got into the episode and like, okay, now we understand that Aggie is conflicted, right? She's a scientist. She believes Picard, but maybe she starts to question Commodore O or her role as who she is on the ship. But it keeps going, and Aggie is a scientist, is what I want to preface first, in the Federation, right?
She's a cyberneticist.
She's a cyberneticist. She is a genius. She is a smart person, a rational person, went to school for years and years and years, analytical mind, right? Of all the people on the ship or in this show, you would probably rely on her to go by the patterns that you see, right? Rios is going to go off the cuff. Raffi is going to be the loose cannon, right? And Picard is going to try to hold everyone together. Elnor is going to be the weird one at the outsider, and Aggie is going to be the scientist that, says, hey, why don't we do this, this, and this because of this, this, and this? She gets mind melded by Commodore O, which is really weird for a lot of reasons.
Especially because we thought Commodore O was a deep cover.
We thought she was Romulan. A deep cover Romulan. So this states that she actually is a Vulcan because she does the Vulcan mind meld.
Or she cheated somehow.
So that's weird that a Vulcan has gone bad in this era of Star Trek. We've seen it kind of before in Enterprise, played around with a little bit before the Vulcans became what they are. So it's not.
That was actually a pretty good episode.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented, but it's weird. 2 is the mind meld itself. We don't generally see the mind meld employed against the will of other people unless it's a last resort, right? Because we've always been told that the Vulcan mind meld is a strain on both parties.
Yes,
I think is the things like there is talk like we reserve it for Vulcans only because they can handle it, or we don't like to use it on outsiders. I think has been a common thing that's been said in several Star Trek series.
Yeah,
we don't like to use it on outsiders
when we have to.
Right. Because in particular, it takes a strain on the person, right? You can turn their brain into mush. And it also takes a toll on the person doing it. And really the only time we see it done, I guess, against the will is in Star Trek V, when Sybok kind of releases people, frees them from their pain.
You're talking nonsense right now.
But that's not really a canon film. We kind of we don't.
They just skipped from 4 to 6.
They went from 4 to 6 for some reason.
Yeah.
And Sybok's name's never been mentioned again. So really the worst film of all time in the Star Trek franchise is probably not one you want to take from. So she does this mind meld, and it goes into Terminator 2 Judgment Day mode, flashbacks. And then shit falls apart for me in terms of Aggie as a character. She automatically believes everything she's seen that Commodore O has showed her in a mind meld. And I have it here highlighted that Aggie is a scientist. She is the analytical one. And I also have here kind of highlighted as a question because I couldn't figure it out. Has the Vulcan mind meld ever been used to show the future? Because I honestly couldn't figure it out because I'm trying to think in my head of like past episodes that have used it. It's always been searching the mind for some sort of information that the person has, right?
Or trying to manage some connection to communicate, like
right.
Spock and the Horta.
Right, like talking, trying to get information that has happened or is about to
Or
happen.
to balance somebody that's going nuts.
Right, like Tuvok issue, like he doesn't have another Vulcan, you know what I mean? Stuff like that, that you just to balance people out. I
Yeah.
don't think it's ever been used to show the future. The closest I think could come is when Spock interacts with the V'ger craft. But he even then he sees V'ger's who he is and the past, right, coming
Yeah.
to be. He doesn't see V'ger destroying the universe or something like that, right? So
No.
I don't think the mind melt has ever been used to imprint, I guess, what you think the future is. And let's say even that it's fake, right? Let's give the benefit of the doubt to the show and the writers that what she showed Aggie is fake because she's a bad guy, right? You could
Mhm.
easily write that down the road saying everything she showed you was bullshit because she's a bullshit artist and she's not really, maybe she's not Vulcan, maybe she actually is Romulan
Or she
claiming to
used
be
a
Vulcan.
cloaked device to
Right.
do whatever.
You could any sorts of thing like that. But that might work on anybody else. That might work on a regular person. But when you do it on like a highly advanced scientist,
Hmm.
the first thing I think that they would do is question the information that they just received, how they got it, where it came from, and how they know. Right? There would be steps. But immediately Aggie totally believes her without question, without issue. The universe is going to come to an end, explosions, death, destruction, right?
Well, she did throw up first, but yeah.
And then she threw up because that's her character, is the girl that vomits. It's very strange to me how easily she just fell for this. Now, the idea of Commodore O can go in a bunch of different directions, right? If we didn't already know she was a bad guy.
Hmm.
If she didn't have that conversation with her lieutenant that sent her out to, destroy or kill Picard or finish the job,
The lieutenant we know is a Romulan.
is a Romulan who Commodore also knows something is happening, right? She's doing something because she's instructing her like as her superior, whatever. If we didn't have that scene, then you could write the direction that Commodore O is doing what she thinks is right with the information she has available to her, right?
Hmm.
That she is in her Vulcan head made the logical connections that this is the right thing to do. You can't do that anymore at this
No,
point because she's evil the
we're
way it's
past
been
that
written
point.
out.
We've
And
been past that
so,
point for like 6 episodes.
yeah, we've been way past that. So now Aggie is full on believer of this. And then she gets chipped. She gets chipped in the way she gives her a transceiver, and I don't think this has ever been done in Star Trek, but she gives
You
her a
have to chew.
transceiver and she
It's
immediately knows to put it in her mouth, right, to swallow it.
it's a chewable.
And then Commodore says you have to chew it.
Enjoy your Flintstones vitamins.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a Flintstones vitamin. So Aggie chews it because apparently now it goes into the bloodstream or some stupid thing. And then she is implied to, Commodore suggests that she needs to go and kill Bruce Maddox while keeping an eye on everyone. So right off the bat, I'm very confused on Aggie as a character and everything we've seen, because this wasn't a slow build to this point.
Nope.
She went crazy as soon as she saw Maddox and essentially went evil, because then she went crazy. She killed Maddox and no one noticed. And we got confirmation that this ship is literally 2 stories and 2 levels that you can see from the bridge deck.
So it's basically like a slightly larger runabout.
Yes, it's like a couple runabouts put together, but there's the front, there's the transporter pad in the back, and then downstairs is a quick ladder to med bay, which is an open door,
Hmm.
right? And we know this because
Wait, where's the holodeck?
yeah, I guess that doesn't have a holodeck.
No, it does.
Does it? Oh yes, no, Picard's room is
Yes.
the holodeck. Or that's where he is staying. He's staying in the holodeck. But what I mean is that later on in this episode, there's a medical emergency again, right?
Hmm.
And they yell, the ENA, the emergency medical hologram, yells from the med bay to the bridge, but not via communicator. He just yells and they hear it. And he jumps back, and Rios goes and runs down there. So clearly they can hear everything that's going on the ship, because what I'm suggesting is if you see the photos, and hopefully I'll have one up, it's just one giant room, not separated by doors or automatic sliding doors. And so
You're thinking this through more than the
I
writers
know. And so and I don't generally blame the writers because they probably didn't design the ship, right? They're just
No.
thinking traditional Star Trek and how everything has its own room that's closed up. You know what I mean? Like a closed off section. This is more a design issue.
Yeah.
But the episode where Aggie kills Maddox and he's screaming and the EMH is going and the alarms are going
What's the
off,
problem?
nobody noticed. And we had an
Nobody noticed.
issue. We had an
And
issue when that happened. Remember, we talked about it saying, how did no one notice a crash cart? And in this episode, everyone notices and hears.
the EMH notices what's
Yes.
wrong with her
Yes.
and
Yes.
deals with it.
And deals with it. This is it, and it's bad. So that is our lead-in, is Aggie, and her issues that she faces this episode, which are really weird. So we then jump forward into the present day, and now it picks up right where we left off. Picard and Soji have just left through the Voyager portal that the Borg now have that can take over the world with, or universe with, the Queen's portal.
Yeah.
They
It's
left
only for the
Elnor.
Queen.
They left Elnor behind because we don't have any more use for him right now. And Hugh stayed behind because he wants to help the XPs. At least
And he
Hugh,
has to hide the portal,
the room.
because God forbid, this horrible setting
Well,
breaking thing.
the Romulans have already won.
Yeah.
The Romulans have already won in terms of who gives a shit. If they
Yeah.
just open that room to that door to that room, they have transporter technology that'll take them anywhere.
Pretty much.
They can say, you know what? Fuck the androids. Let's figure out how they got off this ship because we're smart. Let's interrogate Hugh. Let's get that room. Oh my God, we have unlimited teleport technology. We can go to every planet we ever wanted to and find those androids that way.
Well, they're only going to save it for, a Romulan senator, right?
Yes. I mean, it will never hear about this magic Borg eject pod from Star Trek Voyager race ever again. So Elnor stays behind. The ship bails, right? Rios bails. And Aggie is the one that says, hey, what about the kid, Elnor? Shouldn't we get him? And they try. I mean, he comes back and says, hey, Elnor, what's up? What are we doing? And he says, leave me behind. And then everyone praises him, saying, you're one brave bastard. I'm not really sure what braveness he's showing. Picard's already gone.
Well, he's going to fight the orcs at Helm's Deep.
Yeah, he's going to go fight the orcs at Helm's Deep. There's no reason. I understand a little bit at the end of last episode in terms of emotional storytelling, staying behind to hold the guard off. It's a very traditional, it's a very noble sacrifice that you see in everything. It's that leave me, you save yourself, I'll hold the line. Every film does it.
At this point, it doesn't make sense though.
It doesn't make sense, but I'll give it that it's trying to make you feel like there's some degree of seriousness or intensity going on. But once Rio says, hey, can we get you out of there? We got to go.
Yeah.
He stays with Hugh for no reason. Hugh and Elnor don't have a past or history together, which I'll touch on in a second.
Nope.
There is no connection between Hugh and Elnor in terms of that Picard said, hey, your debt is finished. I pass it on to Hugh or something, right? Or
nope,
I ordered you.
Literally just met.
Yeah, it's not like Picard leaves and says, hey, your job now is to protect Hugh because you're indebted to me and that's my command, right? He just leaves. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they bail and they leave. And Aggie's the only one that's worried and oh, why can't we save? What are we doing? And I have here in my notes just what is happening right now. Everything is just moving along and nobody really cares. And so we break from there to Nepenthe, which I had trouble saying because it reminds me again of Rurapente from Star Trek VI, because everything in this show has to be super similar for nerds that it just becomes confusing. It's dumb, but we jump to Nepenthe. Picard and Soji beam there with this magical thing. So wherever Riker and Troy, because that's where they are, we find out, this planet isn't that far away from Romulan space. No. Because what was the range? 40,000 light years or something?
40,000 light years, yeah.
So it's not, I mean, that's a lot, but in terms of Star Trek, That's not super far. So they're nearby where shit's happening, or at least somewhere near Romulan space.
Well, that episode of Next Gen where Geordi and Data go through that wormhole and wind up in the Delta Quadrant. I
Oh
think
yeah.
they stated that was 80,000 light years away from where they were.
Did they?
I don't remember. It was
It
either
gets
that
so it gets so confusing on
or
distance.
or was it 80 something years? Because I think that's what he said about the two uh, Ferengi that got trapped behind it.
Oh yeah, maybe so.
You'll
Regardless,
you'll you'll find your doctor in whatever
they have the
about 80
technology
years.
on that Borg cube to basically make starships obsolete at this point.
Yep.
So we get to this planet and we meet a little girl, the wild woman or wild girl in the woods. She's got very it's charming, right, in terms of who she is, and she's got face paint on and she's got bows and arrows and a broken compass, and it's that traditional
Mm-hmm.
just wild child that's just happy and free and cool. And I liked her. She was a good actress. She was fun
Mm-hmm.
to see. It turns out that this is Riker's and Troy's little girl. I totally
Kestra.
forget her name. But what
Kestra.
we get, Kestra, but what we get for the next about 10 minutes is what I touched on when we started this about the writing in terms of Star Trek Picard, and that it assumes that the fans watching it are not fans and are stupid people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that, and I don't mean that you people watching it are stupid. I just saying that the terms of the style of this writing is being written to people who are dumb.
Who
You know
don't
what I
know
mean?
shit about Star
Yes,
Trek.
that you're just dumb in general. Um, Even though you're watching it, you're not dumb. You're actually smart because you get this. And I mentioned this because this little girl only serves the purpose of being an info dump. And that's the only thing I wrote here is little girl info dump in quotations.
Yeah.
Because she shows up and all she does is explain everything that a new fan would need to know about Commander Data.
Yep.
She serves no other purpose except to explain to Soji how cool Commander Data was. He was the most awesome guy ever. He could run real fast. He could jump. He was an android. She goes into like details that people on the Enterprise wouldn't even know that worked with him. Like, he really wanted to be human, and she tells all these stories and yada yada yada.
It's funny because I've been watching Next Gen again, and I just watched the episode "The Most Toys,"
Mm.
which is the one where they think Data died, and he was actually taken by Saul Rubinek
Yes.
character. And there's a scene where they go into Data's quarters, and Geordi's going through the desk like, well, okay, well, here's this Shakespeare book on Shakespeare that Captain gave to him, and here's his deck of cards, and they get to his medals, and he hands it to Wesley, and Wesley's like, oh wow, this is like he's got like every high level honor.
Yeah, he has like a
Awesome shit.
box of just like every medal you could receive,
Oh yeah.
like decorated all over those. And Wesley didn't know anything about it.
And the entire point of the scene is like he had all of this going for him that people who looked up his record would know,
But he never talked about it.
and he never talked about it. But the point of the scene was that it's done so organically.
Yes.
It's very somber for Geordi because they're actual friends.
And you're learning about Data in a natural way
Well,
by
they
watching what's
actually,
happening.
yeah, they actually mentioned his medals in an earlier episode, but I forget which one.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
I
no,
can't.
it's the one with Bruce Maddox in it,
The Maddox one, yes,
where
because
they're
they
reading out
cite
his
his
service
record.
record.
Yes.
Yeah,
They
so
cite his record.
and I mean
No, that's
that's better.
interesting in terms of storytelling because you're
It's
learning.
organic.
Yeah,
It's
you're
not,
learning about him as it's happening.
it's not just an info dump.
Yeah, you're not being explained that, it'd be different if they were walking to like Data's room and he's like, Data was a decorated this, that, and all these awards. You just need that because
But that's the
you're
thing,
learning
like,
about this character.
if you hadn't watched the first 2 seasons, that
Yes.
episode would tell you everything you need to know.
Yes. And this one explains this little girl knows too much.
Yeah.
Is I don't mind her explaining a little bit when she finds out that Soji is like an android, because there's that moment where Picard explains hey, I'm sorry, you're not human, even though you just found this out. Um, and then the little girl serves to like, hey, that's cool, or I knew an android, or something like that. Like my dad talked about an android. If I was a child and my parent had an old, really good friend that is dead, I can assure you that I wouldn't know nearly anything about him, other than a few stories if they like served in the military, maybe, but probably not directly. This girl knows the entire Wikipedia of Data, uh, and it doesn't work. So
They literally just dumped his memory alpha page into the
yes,
fucking
and that's
script.
and I like her. I like the character. I like her being this little wild child. I just don't like her being an info dump, because that's the first thing you get from her is Commander Data this, Commander Data that. He did this. He was this cool. He was awesome. He's awesome. Hey, everyone that's watching the show, Data's super cool. And he's the most awesome person in the world. And then you go back to TNG, and he was just a really good crew member that
In that same episode,
that
like
wasn't a superhero. He was
they
just,
they watch his shuttle blow up, and Worf has a bigger reaction than Picard
yes. And
does.
Picard's just like, we got to go. We're leaving. Take your time. You got this much time, but we're bailing.
I
So yeah.
need you rested by whatever time tomorrow.
So then we move to Riker and Troy's house, which does look like the house from Generations a little bit.
Actually, I'm wondering, is that the cabin from the Great Outdoors?
I don't know, but every
Because it
time I
looks
saw it,
like it.
it looked super familiar, like I've seen it before.
It looks like the cabin from the Great Outdoors, which is still on the Universal
It
lot.
might be that. It might be a repaint then. It did look, I've seen it before somewhere. So we
A
get
trailer
in,
to figure out. So
we
I'm
meet
looking
Troy and
for that.
Riker, who are looking old
Hmm.
and chilling, and not in Starfleet anymore, even though they're on active reserve duties, what they mentioned,
Yeah.
which is sad. We're then introduced, sort of, to their second child. And this is where the episode for me personally falls apart.
Oh, I
Uh,
hated it too.
in terms of tone, styling, and what you're doing to characters. So they had a child before the girl,
Hmm.
um,
Fad.
and he's dead.
Hmm.
We've never met him. He's never been mentioned in the TV series, in the films,
Nope.
in the novels, anything that they had a child. If they had a second child, I don't mind, but him being dead uh, serves a terrible purpose in this episode that I'll touch on a little bit. So
Oh boy, I can
he
see it
is
coming.
dead. He had a rare silicone based disease that is easily treatable, they said.
Hmm.
It sounded stupid, but they said that the cure is simple. All you needed is a positronic matrix that you would filter it through or something, and it would remove those impurities of the silicon based virus, and you'd be fine. They banned synths, which in turn means they banned research, which in turn means that there were no more positronic matrices in play. I have a number of issues with this.
Oh, I bet I do too, but I
Um,
bet you do.
One, none of this makes any goddamn sense.
No.
Uh, why Data's positronic matrix and his brain were unique to
Yeah.
him and his
Mhm.
brothers.
Yeah.
That was the whole goal of Maddox, was to re-engineer those that positronic brain. We saw the synths
Hmm.
earlier on that destroyed Mars. It didn't have that capability of Data's.
Nope.
We just saw them as mindless, essentially automatons, kind of drones.
Hmm.
Uh,
Good
they didn't
morning,
have the
blessed
positronic
people.
matrix that allowed him to think,
Nope.
feel, emote, eventually with the chip, but rationalize things. These were robots essentially.
Hmm.
So the idea that you have a silicon based thing and the only thing to save you is essentially a version of Data's brain or something along those lines uh, is a faulty premise to go on. Two, this had to have happened post Mars,
Yeah.
because if it was prior to Mars, they would have been able to do it. So let's say they're on the ship, and they do mention he was born in space with them. So let's say they're on the Titan, and let's say Mars happens, and they ban synthetics and synthetic research and everything to do with it. That's a very stupid thing to do. Um, we don't even do that today, right? Things can be illegal or banned, but research on them still takes place because
Cloning.
because yes, cloning is illegal, but it still takes place. The research for it, in case we have a need for it in the future of some kind, right? Something
Well, it
good
moves
might come of the
research.
research.
Yeah.
So let's say that Mars happened. They get rid of all the synths. Let's say they get rid of all the brains that they needed from the Daystrom Institute. My question is, the Daystrom Institute, and I wrote it down here, still exists. Aggie is in charge of it still, right? She clearly had a huge room with the team.
Yeah.
They just couldn't do new research into it. Now, we see this today sometimes when we ban technologies or concepts and stuff. But anything that's already came about, we can still play with. Kind of, it's the idea of anything moving forward is banned. My issue here is that how could they not get one? Whatever they needed. Riker is the captain of the Titan. He has a history in Starfleet as a hero who literally saved the universe several times, or at least helped.
Has two maneuvers named after himself.
Yes, multiple maneuvers named after himself. I'm assuming he did great work on his exploration ship on the Titan. He is a legend in Starfleet on his own right at this point.
Yeah.
To not be able to call Starfleet and say, "Hey, my son is dying, and we need a positronic matrix. Can you open the archives and let us have the information?" And them not get it, is problematic. And so what I wrote here is that this dead kid feels cheap. Yeah. And it serves two purposes, is what I have noted here. And the purpose is, this is the only time I've seen this happen in Star Trek, where we see characters come back in many different shows, right? Spock came back in TNG. Brent Spiner came in Enterprise as a descendant, or one of his ancestors. We see this happen all the time. The question was, and that we had coming into Picard, is what are they going to do with the old cast? Right? When you're dealing with the same era in the same generation, you're going to say, hey, what is Geordi doing? What is Worf doing? What is Riker and Troy doing? What is West? You're going to ask these questions because they're living in this timeline.
Star Trek Online answers that.
Yes, but they're living in this. They're living in this timeline, so you generally want to know, right? Yeah. And most ideas would be just, hey, just hint about them. Oh, they mentioned LaForge, and they mentioned them earlier on that they would help in a heartbeat. Well, so that means they're alive. Okay, mention that. Okay, maybe Geordi is on a mission in the Delta Quadrant or something, right? They opened up a wormhole, or just somewhere where they're not anywhere in the capability to be near helping Picard, because the universe and the galaxy is a big place, right? And they can't just show up. This dead kid only serves to get Riker and Troy out of the show. That's it. It feels like they're only there to keep the TNG cast, the main people that you would be concerned with, which would be Riker probably because he was his number one. Troy is whatever, but they're married, so you have to, wonder where they are.
Yeah.
This dead kid only serves as a reason to keep Troy and Riker from being in the show any longer.
Yeah.
And that feels cheap. It feels cheap that it takes a dead kid that we don't know about. So I can't feel bad. I don't feel bad. I don't feel sad because there's no emotional connection to the child.
No.
There wasn't a series where Troy and Riker had a kid and went about on the Titan. That would have been a fun show to see. If that had happened, then I would have some deep connection to this child. I don't. It was simply there to write them off the show because Troy directly says, or Riker says, right? I don't want to put my daughter in danger. She's the only thing I have left. I want to help you. You can stay here as long as you want, but don't drag us in there. I don't want to know what's happening. I don't want to know this, that, the other, right?
The thing that really killed me about his response, why didn't you contact Starfleet?
Yeah. Yeah. None of this makes any sense. His kid, there's no reason for his kid to be dead. One.
Especially because would that even necessarily be a robot brain at this point if they're basically using it as some sort of virus centrifuge?
I don't know what this virus is, but it brings up way too many questions and issues than him having... See, because the problem in Star Trek at this point is if you have a disease, there's a cure for it. Somewhere. Someone has a cure for it, or at least to slow it down. So you can't have a disease that is incurable unless you also make some stupid loophole as to why it's incurable. Oh yeah, we could cure it, but the Federation banned this matrixy, which doesn't make sense, so we can't use it.
Because it's not even a robot brain at that point. You're
No,
literally just using it as like this thing to
if this was the
make
real
medicine.
world and Mars happened, you would ban synthetics and then you would allow medical and research to continue to work on it to provide help for people who need it.
You'd ban artificial intelligence.
Yes.
You wouldn't ban like, oh yeah, robot brains.
It's like the argument people have had with like stem cells and stuff and cloning.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to do cloning. That's scary and sets up too many questions. But now people are like, oh, stem cells? Okay, I get that. That's a byproduct of we can use that to help each other out, right? It's not we're going to cancel everything outright.
Especially because we're currently figuring out how to break normal cells back down into
Yes.
stem cells, which is
So
great.
this kid is dead. From there, we jump back to the spaceship, and they're being followed. They're being followed by hot Romulan guy who is chasing him. Now we know he's chasing them because Aggie has that chip right inside her. They don't know why he's chasing them.
And
they do some pilot.
He's got his fidget cube.
Yeah, he's got his fidget cube now, and they do some fancy flying maneuvers like it's Star Wars or something. But really, it's just he goes to warp real fast, and then he stops. Then he goes to warp real fast, and then he stops.
It's almost the Picard maneuver, except not.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this is fancy or anything. But the only thing I want to mention in that scene is that there's a Star Wars reference right in it because of Aggie, who mentions, why can't we just hide in a comet inside? And she mentions some random creature.
Oh, I hated that.
And that bugged me. And that's the entire scene is only for that point because I wrote it down. She literally says, why don't we just hide in some comet inside? I don't know what she says, but some worm creature, I'm assuming, just like in Star Wars. It's stupid. It's a needless scene that is only there to give a cheap laugh. From there, we jump back to Riker and Troy.
We know science fiction.
We're doing a lot of jumping back and forth in this episode between kind of sort of action in space and Nepenthe. And so the next part that I really want to talk about, it ties back to their dead child, because this bugged me for the entire episode. Because that's like writing 101. It's really cheap. It's a cheap way to build quick emotion, right? Kill off someone.
Yeah.
Kill a character that means a lot to people. And that is fine if it serves the story, right? If you have someone maybe that's leaving, like TNG season 1, right?
Yeah.
Kill off a character because they're gone. Okay. You're not going to get them back. Or if you've run out of stories to tell with a character, kill them off or write them out some way, right? Just make sure there's nothing else you can do with them. Dax is a perfect example.
Probably better than Tasha Yar because Denise Crosby almost instantly regretted it.
Yeah, no, she was
back like a season and a half later.
Dax was there for a long run. She loved Star Trek, right? She's married to, I think, a Star Trek producer or something.
She's married to Leonard Nimoy's son.
Yes, someone in there. So she's a fan, but she was offered a big role on a TV show, Becker, right?
Yes.
And she couldn't do both. She couldn't do both. She tried for a little bit, I think. I have to.
Can you really turn down Ted Danson?
Yeah, it's like, hey, it's a Ted Danson comedy and a lead. I'm one of the mains. DS9 has, it's been years now. I need to flex my muscles. Totally get it. The way she was written off and killed made sense. There was no more stories.
She didn't expect them to kill her.
No, that she didn't.
They did.
It's Star Trek, so you always hope that maybe in the future you can come back to do something.
Yeah.
But when you're a writing team and you feel like you've told all the stories you can tell, you kill them off. In this sense, we don't have any stories with the kid.
No. The story is that the kid is dead.
And this is what I mean about cheap writing, is because the quickest way is to kill a loved one that you don't know. Because it doesn't cost you anything or very little. And you can see this in like TV procedurals, cop shows, like Law and Order, NYPD Blue, some of the older ones, where one of the main characters' wife is murdered.
Yeah.
And you know about her, she exists, but it's a bit part that maybe happens 3 times in a season.
Yeah.
Or I think the most one I can remember is Law and Order, where the main cop's daughter is a druggie and ends up dead and murdered.
Oh yeah.
And she was a very minor character, but he did talk about her a few times, right? And oh, she's, she got better. And then all of a sudden, she's murdered because, it's sweeps month,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's cheap, it's easy. You don't really know this character, so it's not a big loss, but it's a great way to like build emotion. Same thing here. There's no reason for him to be dead other than to write them out of the show and make us feel bad. And the question comes up is that they moved to Nepenthe because the soil has regenerative properties. Now, I don't mind the idea of doing that. That seems a very natural thing for a parent to do.
Mm-hmm.
When
A
your
lot of
child
people
is sick, you will do literally anything and try anything.
like they'll move to like slightly more tropical
Right.
yeah,
You see that today. Like a child gets sick,
climates.
you will sell everything and move to a nicer climate, maybe fresh air. Anything, even if it has a 0.0001% chance of working, you'll do it because it's your kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind them going to Nepenthe, and it shows that the soil is really rich and regenerative. The tomatoes are growing. There's a lot of food, and it looks like a really nice place. But I wrote under here, why not go to the Baku planet?
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one.
I don't understand. Why
Well, I
not
mean,
go to the Baku planet, which keeps you young forever? And I know what people in the comments are going to say, because we always have a few people that either agree with us or disagree with us on points.
oh yeah,
That they mention, and this is mentioned in extra stories as well about that interesting film, is that the Baku aren't native and the Sona are former Baku. And they mention, well, if they are back together, couldn't the Sona get young again? And they say no, they've been gone for too long. It takes, I think it said it takes a bunch of years to start becoming, a part of you of the planet, right? Because the main Sona guy can't go back because remember he's dying in the film.
yeah,
He's stretching his
he's
face.
dying, and
And,
as I
and
recall, it's because they were like they've been doing all this shit to prolong their lives just
yeah, they've been
so
doing
that
so much that it would take too many years beyond what he's capable of living anyways, and it wouldn't work. So why not take the child? When the Enterprise goes to the Baku planet, they all immediately start to get better.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking Geordi's eyeballs begin
Oh
to
yeah.
regenerate.
Geordi's
Right?
eyes regenerate.
His eyes come
Born
back from
blind.
nothing,
He was born blind.
and his eyes recreate themselves in his head in the space of probably a week, maybe.
Yeah, and Worf starts going through puberty again.
Worf goes through puberty again, and there's that scene where Geordi's like, I just want to see the sunrise or the sunset
Just one
once
last,
before,
just
I
once.
totally think we need to go and blah, blah, blah. So
Mhm.
this stuff happens quickly. So I'm not saying that it could have saved their son, but if there's a ban on synthetics, your child has this disease, the first thing you would do is say, I am resigning my commission, because both Riker and Troy were on the goddamn Baku world. They know what it does. They were all involved in it because they both got horny, and it was that goddamn Baku world that got them back together again.
That's right.
Remember,
I
the
forgot.
entire point of them coming back together, because they had broken up and she was with Worf and then no one was with no one, was because they got hot and horny because of the Baku planet.
That's right.
That entire point of that planet was to bring Troy and Riker in universe together to get married for Nemesis, the next film. So they know about it. 2, it's within Federation space. It's not blocked off. It's not somewhere else. It's not in Romulan space. The war is over with the Dominion. The sonar aren't an issue anymore. The planet is there. It's under the protection of the Federation of Planets. Riker and Troy could have resigned their commissions, gone there, and fixed this entire goddamn problem, or at the very least, prolonged his life for years to come until the ban was lifted. Because that's what you would think of as a Starfleet officer or a captain. Hey, there's this ban. I'm going to save my kid. Once the ban lifts, we won't have to stay here anymore.
Well, here's the other thing. Remember in Enterprise, around the point where they have the episode with the augments?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it's that episode. Dr. Flux is like, oh yeah, we use genetic, manipulation on our planet to great effect, and all this stuff, but it's banned here because of all the shit that happened in the eugenics wars.
But it's not banned on his planet.
Yes.
It's not banned on other Federation member worlds. Yes, they could. There's a lot of places they could go.
There's another stupid thing, another plot hole.
My God. And so
I just thought of that one too.
It makes me so angry that they destroy Riker and Troy emotionally simply to get them off the goddamn show and to give you a reason why they can't be involved in Picard's little adventure. And that makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me sad. So I put here, I just wrote that the synthetic band killed their child.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wrote here in quotes, why does Daystrom still have a cyber division then? Why is Aggie still around? Why are they, if they've actually banned all this stuff, wouldn't they shutter everything? Because remember, when Picard comes around, it's been 14 years.
Yeah.
And there's still a division at Daystrom in the front lobby that's a giant classroom size stuff where Aggie says, this is all that's left. I'm like, that's a lot of stuff.
Here's B4. Look at his robot ass.
They didn't even destroy him. They have B4 in a box. In a box. So they have a positronic brain that they could have saved Riker's cube with right there. This is dumb. And so we go on from there. And we come to find out that, so they've done this to Riker and Troy. They've given them a child, killed it, gave them another child as the reason why they're not going to get involved, which is really cheap. Very, very cheap. Then Picard becomes just a giant asshole. And he is a total dick to Soji from the time they get to Nepenthe on until the end of this episode.
Troy actually calls him on it.
That's exactly right. And I wrote this down. Picard is an absolute asshole. He's a total dick to Soji before dinner, right? Soji's having this revelation, which Picard notes that you're just finding out that you're an android, even though you have memories of being around for 20-something years. That's a big thing to swallow within 10 minutes, right? And he's like, hey, I know this is hard, blah, blah, blah. They get to the planet. She goes and eats that tomato. She's like, whoa, this tastes real. It's the old Star Trek adage of real food versus replicator food.
Yeah.
She eats it.
Real nutrition.
This tastes real. Picard comes over and is just a total piece of shit to her. She's like, how do you not love this being around here? And oh yes, this is he pulls this. Yeah, this is totally clandestine operation. All this good food and good friends. Like, he's being a piece of shit. And Troy directly calls him on it. And I wrote here that that's the most Star Trek The Next Generation moment we have had this entire season.
Oh, it is.
That is the most natural Star Trek thing that could happen, because the only character that is being themselves in this entire series is Commander Troy for the 10 or so lines she has in this episode. She's the only one. She calls Picard on, this is not who you are. Why are you acting like this piece of shit? You would have never done this as captain on the Enterprise. You would have never talked this way to someone. And he's like, oh, I guess you're right. And then they move on from there. That's the only part of this entire season so far that has felt Star Trek The Next Generation to me, is Troy calling out his bullshit. And then automatically Picard makes the realization, oh, I guess you're right. And they say, well, let's pretend the dinner table is 10 forward and everything's okay. That doesn't excuse everything he's done, that he's been written like an asshole. He claps when, remember, Raffi is a drunk and probably high and just destroyed her only friendship she has to get them safely somewhere. He's the one clapping. We talked about that not being very Picard thing to do. No. So many things he's done is not very Picard. Even going in at the beginning to the Starfleet CNC and demanding a ship and a crew for a covert mission is a very dickish thing to do.
I don't recall if we really brought up the French pirate routine.
The French pirate routine, him being a dick on Free Cloud, he's just not likable as this. And I know he's in the right because that's the way the show's written. But he's going about it in such a shitty way. And I put here, that's the just, hey, nice moment. You need to be Picard again. I was like, yeah, that's the whole
Mm-hmm.
goddamn point of why you wanted this show in the first place, to see that Picard. We don't want him to see this just cranky old man. And then as soon as we get this touching, actual first touching moment, first actual connection to TNG of like, hey, you need to be Picard, you know, we're your friends, but on the Enterprise, you would have never done this, and yada yada. We go right into a ninja fight.
Yeah, that's right. I keep
And so
forgetting that it jumps back and forth.
it's jumping back and forth. And I think both of us have advocated that when this show kind of slows down a little bit, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. I
When
mean,
it's
they're still making huge mistakes
they're still
constantly,
making
but
huge story mistakes, but when it slows down and it isn't pew pew in space like Star Wars,
mm-hmm.
it is doing good work. Maybe not good Star Trek work, but it is doing good work. So I understand why people would like that. But during all this, we're being interstitialed by 800 different things happening on the spaceship, on their ship, right? And it's not like an A plot, B plot, like the Picard plot is the A plot, the team getting to Nepenthe is the B plot. The B plot team on the ship also has 2 or 3 plots going around, because Aggie is trying to come to terms, right, with if she wants to be a spy or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think because she screams about wanting to go home. And then we have Rios being super weird and interrogating Aggie in the med bay, which I thought he was going to go down there and expose her. It's like, I'm going to get her.
But no.
I'm going to figure this out. And it starts the right way. He's like, hey, I know it's tough out here. You're doing the best you can. But this guy, this Romulan dude keeps finding, he keeps locking onto her transponder somehow. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, oh, he's going to trick her into like breaking down or revealing that she's the spy, unintentionally, because she's actually good. And he's like, I think Raffi, she's the only one not accounted for, that she just showed back up. And ever since, we're being followed.
Mm.
And I'm like, cool. And then Aggie doesn't say anything, doesn't give up the ghost, and he just bails, right? He jumps
Yeah.
back up to the bridge, and then he starts going to Raffi, and I'm like, this is where it's going to be good. He's going to explain to Raffi, he's like, hey, something's up. I've known you for a long time. I think we're being tracked, and I don't trust her, because it would have been set up. Remember in the first episode where Aggie comes aboard and Raffi goes, no background check? I don't know who this girl is. I haven't done any research. And Picard says she's fine. So I would assume that everyone would be smart enough, if they're being tailed, maybe the person we know nothing about on the ship may be compromised.
Mm.
Maybe they didn't do it, but maybe they're compromised. But no, he goes to Raffi and says, hey, we're being tracked. I hope it's not your fault. And then Raffi goes jokingly, what do you want to stuff me in an airlock? And he goes, I hope I don't have to. Like, serious.
Yeah. Like he's serious. He's going to space her.
Not jokingly. He's trying to play both sides for his own benefit, which I get, but like, you're just going to slack off Raffi and everyone just because? Are you that stupid, Rios? That you don't know? I'm watching this show as a fan. I'm like, Aggie's acting weird. You guys have all mentioned it, because Rios and Raffi like give each other like this eyeball when Aggie starts going crazy. And remember, Raffi takes her to go get cake.
Mm-hmm.
So really, Mama Raffi, or like whatever maneuver, which was fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
She becomes all like motherly because I guess, she once had a son. But I thought she was going to take her to vomit on purpose. I thought she was going to like slip something in her chocolate milk, and so they could take her to medbay and scan her or something. Like, I thought they were in this together to like, hey, this bitch is acting weird. Figure it out. Right. And so she was vomiting from the chocolate cake. And I thought, well, that's the point, right? Maybe there's a track. They know there's a tracker inside her, so they got to vomit it out.
They do not.
They do not. They play it off. Rios plays as both of them are bad. And it's the stupidest goddamn thing in the world. And remember, this action is all happening as Picard is like, as they're doing like actually good storytelling or trying to do stuff on the planet that's like dramatic and slow. And you get back to the ship and everyone's running around like a chicken with their head cut off, because then Aggie synthesizes in a 3D printer some sort of neurotoxin out of a 3D printer and sticks herself in the neck. And she starts convulsing. White stuff starts coming out of her mouth. And then guess what happens when the crash car comes out? The emergency medical hologram turns up and just looks at her funny.
And knows exactly what's wrong.
knows what's wrong, is incredibly loud because the beeping and the hollering is happening, and then only decides to tell the bridge crew when they jump down that she's in a coma. You guys didn't hear it. I know you're literally in the other room and I can see you and throw a tennis ball and hit you. And I know you didn't notice anything that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so Aggie puts herself into a coma. Why? We're not sure. I guess the implication is that
It disables the tracker.
it disables the tracker because I mean it says there's a chance this might kill certain races or individuals or creatures, and so she does that to herself too because she doesn't want to tell them. She doesn't act like a smart scientist.
No.
If she says, okay, I fucked up. Hey, maybe I should tell them. And then they get the doctor here and we figure out, that it's in my bloodstream and we can pull it out and we're all safe. She just injects herself with poison. And then we jump back, of course, between that to the planet where they're telling about a dead kid. And it's just bad pacing, bad storytelling. And then we get to a ninja fight because all of a sudden we forget that, oh yeah, remember Elnor? He hasn't been mentioned since the very beginning, but he's still on that cube with Hugh.
But he's hidden right now.
But he's hidden because he's a ninja.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lady Romulan, incest girl, is now apparently in charge. And they have a stand down. And this is where it gets even more stupid because the first thing she says, Hugh is being interrogated. She kills the XBs, a bunch of other former drones, right? Mm-hmm. Which Hugh is like destroyed over. Makes sense. That's essentially his only family because he was always Borg. And you're killing his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says the stupidest thing I've ever heard for a Tal Shiar Romulan or Zhat Vash. I can't touch you because of your Starfleet diplomatic immunity. What the fuck?
Why would that matter to her?
Why would that matter in the middle of Romulan space where you could just say anything happened?
He slipped on the walkway and
you're on a fucking Borg cube.
Borg cube.
He accidentally activated something he wasn't aware of and it killed him.
The whole place is ocean non-compliant.
It is a death trap. Just say a bunch of XBs malfunctioned, came out of their cocoon things and pushed them over the edge.
A walkway gave out beneath them.
There's no way for them to come and figure that out. But she says, I can't touch you. You've got diplomatic immunity like in Lethal Weapon 2. You can do whatever you want, even though we're the bad guys. And I'm like, cool. Hugh's in the clear. Now they're just going to deal with Elnor.
Mm-hmm.
Hugh and Elnor walk away. And then Hugh says, we're going back to that magical place. And I'm going to the control matrix and I'm going to turn this Borg cube against them and blow the whole thing up because if they're going to do this to the Borg, no one can have them. Right? He does this kind of rousing speech of like, fuck you, we're all going down with this ship. Right? And then Romulan lady comes right back from the same hallway and says, haha, I got you, sir. That's exactly. I had the old tape recorder in the pocket trick. You didn't think we weren't watching you? I knew they were watching you, fucking idiots. You're on their ship. And then she goes, aha, now I can kill you because you were starting a revolution and that's treason to the Romulan people. And I'm like, what the fuck now? Are you going to send that tape to Starfleet and be like, look, he was an insurrectionist? Like, shut up. You could have killed him the first time. Her reasoning makes no sense that you have diplomatic immunity, but now you say, fuck him, I'm going to take down this ship. Hearing this, no recordings or anything, she just heard this and says, I got you. I got you, motherfucker.
What Legolas is.
Then she realizes, Legolas is a Quat Malat.
Quat Malat, yeah.
Quat Millet.
Quack, quack, quack.
And she knows everything about him, that he's a ninja. Mm-hmm. And she says, hey, let's fucking fight one-on-one style with her.
And she puts away her disruptor because she's like, this is how, Zhat Vash and
this is how we fight, and this is how you fight. And he puts away his sword, and they do a little bit of fisticuff ninja stuff. And then during this, she's like, well, I'm a bad guy, right? So I'm not going to play by the rules. So she grabs her little Romulan throwing knives and throws one into the neck of Hugh.
Mm-hmm.
And he's deader than shit.
I saw this coming since they introduced him.
They brought him back to just say hi to Picard once. Remember, they've only shared one scene together.
Yep.
And then they don't know what to do with him because the Borg are out of the picture at this point. Right. This is now a Romulan cube. The Borg are out of the picture.
We're talking about hacks.
Yeah. We're talking about people that literally have reduced the Borg as to nothing but playthings now for the Romulans.
Which is somehow even worse than what Voyager did to them, but...
Yes. So she throws a little knife into his throat, which kills him immediately. I'm not a doctor or a surgeon, but I assume that you could probably save someone from, unless it got their carotid artery. But even then, in the future,
then, if you keep pressure on it, like, you can keep them alive for a little while.
you are in this cube still, the technology all over the place. So then she tries to kill Quat Malat dude, Elnor, but she gets beamed away, right? Or she beams away. Something happens. Hugh dies and says, you have to save everyone or destroy this cube or whatever. I didn't even pay attention because I was so infuriated at this point. So I just put here, Hugh dies needlessly. And this ties back to Riker's kid. And we had this conversation a little while ago where I wrote here, another cheap death for the sake of making you feel something. Because here's what it does. Two things. Fans know who Hugh is and have a serious connection with him. And when he was announced as being part of the show, people were like, this is awesome. Hugh was such a cool part of TNG, even though he was only in those 2 or 3 episodes. Like, what he was in terms of the Borg, like, is a problem. Because remember, he wanted to go back and, like, infect the Borg with essentially freedom. And so now he's dead. And so fans of Hugh were pissed. I'm pissed. And 2, it again serves a needless connection because it's a death of a sort of main character. So people that only know him from this series are just like, oh, I kind of liked him. He was cool. He was a former Borg. It's interesting. Oh, he's dead. So you've pissed off probably both sets of people now at this point. And I also have here, he dies giving this, like, you have to save the people. And you
need to find an XB to do.
You need to find an XB to help you and like get to the core and save them. And I just put here, Elnor has no connection to Hugh.
Nope.
This is a meaningless death that only serves to make the audience mad or sad.
They met like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. They literally have met less than 30 minutes, fought together once, and now he's dead. And he gives this speech like he's known Elnor his whole life. Like, it would have been totally different if they ran to this portal and Hugh took a bullet to the throat or something, right? And instead of getting help, gets Picard and Soji through the portal, right? And says goodbye to Picard as they're leaving. You know what I mean? Like, he takes a bullet on the way. It's another trope, right? It's another cheap writing thing, but it fits better because then you have, outside of Data and Geordi, Hugh has no friends other than Picard, or at least connections that they've interacted with, right? Because Crusher's not here. Other people aren't here. So you only have Data's dead. Riker was on board, but wasn't really involved with that. It was really Picard, Geordi, and Data, and Hugh.
Maybe Dr. Crusher.
Maybe Dr. Crusher, but again, she's not in this series right now, so you can't involve her. The only one you have is Picard. So if you're going to have him die saving Soji and Picard, that would be at least a fitting sort of send-off. He did, again, it's the Data arc, right?
Yep.
The most human thing you could do is sacrifice yourself for another. Hugh was a drone who believed nothing mattered but the collective, and then all of a sudden he's turned around and he's saved Picard. We would have complained and saying, hey, this is the same thing with Data and Nemesis, right? Coming around. We would have noted it, but it would have made more structural sense. Here, he's just fucking dead and tells Elnor to go and do his thing. We shoot back to the planet. Right. Hugh's dead. Yep. Elnor's on the run. This kid just has grown up with women Romulan nuns in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't know anything about anything, and he's now tasked with taking down an entire Borg cube on his own.
He has a sword.
and he's got a sword in a shooty shoot fight. This kid is going to get fucked up. So we jump back to the planet. This is where Troy and Riker's daughter gets weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I have here in quotations, baby's first TV show, because we talked about a little bit before how this TV show treats the audience like they're stupid or children. And what I mean by that is they're having this conversation over dinner, which is lit by just a couple of candles. It's very weird. So they're eating, and Soji decides to open up to Captain Picard and company, because remember, she doesn't trust them. She doesn't trust anybody. But Troy had this conversation with Picard, and he's now compassionate, logical. It was the greatest line of this whole series so far when Troy talked to him, right?
There's one thing I want to note before we go any further.
Yes.
There's a scene where they're talking with Riker, and Soji does the data head tilt.
Oh, yes, the data head tilt. They talked about that on the Ready Room show.
Has she done that at any point in the rest of this series?
No.
So she literally just does it so that Riker's like, oh, yeah, I can see it.
They talked about it. I saw the Radio Room prior to this episode because it was in my recommended, and they talked about the data head tilt, and if she had talked to Brent Spiner about it, and he said no, they never talked to me, but I know she watched a ton of TNG and data specific episodes, so she took that from herself. But they suggested in that episode in the Radio Room that she had just done that, right, and it became part of the script. Like one of those throwaway kind of things that, that was kind of cool. Let's do that. And so when I heard that and they showed the clip, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Maybe she did it on her own. And then of course, when you watch the scene, Riker mentions it directly to the audience, like, we're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
She does the data head tilt real quick thing. And then he goes, oh, she's Data's daughter. That's exactly what Data did. And again, it goes back to baby's first TV show. You have to tell everyone exactly what's happening and explain everything to them because they're stupid.
Have you ever read any of the soap comic strips?
No, I haven't.
Stuff like Rex Morgan, MD, or Mary Worth.
So Mary Worth, yes. Yeah, I know her.
Basically, the way a lot of these were written for decades and decades and decades was so that you could miss like entire weeks of stuff and come right back in and understand it. And I get the feeling that that's how this is being written, so that you don't need to watch Next Gen to understand it, but it's so incongruous that it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't work when there are stakes on the line. Like when there is, like in those comic strips, and I've read them, it's just day-to-day life stuff.
Mostly.
And so here, when there's like universes on the line, it just feels like everyone's an info dump, and it feels like I'm playing a PS3 era video game. That's what it feels like. It feels like I'm playing like an Xbox 360 game where it's just like cutscene and explain everything, and then a text dump, and then text dump, and then explain everything, and here's a little bit of gameplay in between. That's what it feels like. Because right after that, they're at the dinner table, like we mentioned. They find out. Soji becomes their friend and friendly to them and says, okay, he tricked me. All I know is two red moons, and electrical storm. Now, we had issue with this last episode, remember? And we had issue with this because Romulan lady instantly found out the planet. And remember, we talked about this, like, whoa, that was really quick for the entire universe to know. I mean, I can't even find fucking things on Google if I'm almost word for word exactly. Can't find them. But she, right away with this binary numerical computer system the Romulans have, knows where the two moons and the electrical storm in space is. As they're having this conversation, Riker, Troy, and Picard are like, cool, we know you have a home planet. This is awesome.
Figure it out.
We just have to figure it out. How are we going to do it? We don't have the technology. We don't have a ship. They're like going through logical steps of essentially a Radio Room situation, right? Okay, this is the task at hand. I need ideas, people. How are we going to get this? As this happens, Riker's little girl is playing on her cell phone. As soon as they start asking how are we going to do this, she raises her hand and says, "I know where the planet is.
Mm-hmm.
I know where the magic planet is." Instantly.
Do you remember how she found out?
Yeah. And she finds out not by searching the internet, not by Googling it. She asks the creepy old sort of fake captain down the road if he's ever seen two moons
In an electrical
in an
storm.
electrical storm that's all red. And her, who is older than Picard, her friend that she mentions is older than Picard, who used to be a captain, who Riker doesn't think was actually a captain, uh, says, "Oh yeah, I know, I've been there. It's here." And everyone's like, "Whoa, cool." And I just put, they instantly found the magical planet, dot dot dot. And I put baby's first TV show in this specifically because this doesn't happen a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you usually get a major or an interesting hurdle and leave it to the next episode, or let it breathe a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that feels like it would have been the end of an episode. Oh,
A cliffhanger.
we know where Soji's planet is. We need to find it. We know what it looks like. And then you would have had the girl saying, "Hey, what about so and so down the street? You know, he's an old space boomer who is out. He might know." So you'd have a start, right? You'd have a clue left going forward. The problem with this baby's first TV show is that when you have a major or interesting hurdle, the next scene jumps that hurdle and explains how to do it. That happens a lot in really shitty television shows where a hurdle is placed in front of them and then it's instantly answered by the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I can cut some slack for that if it's weekly. The problem here is that they set up a major hurdle about, now we know where Soji's planet is. Let's find out how to get it. And they answer it within the same scene. They set up these stakes of what needs to be done and create tension and then take it away from you before they're done talking.
Well, see, they knew where they wanted to end. They wanted to end on Picard and Soji beaming up, so they had to fix that right away.
Yes.
They're writing everything backwards.
That was some of the laziest and stupidest shitty writing I have ever seen in my life.
They're working backwards from their desired endpoint.
They really are. You cannot put a threat or an obstacle in front of a character and then have that character or another character instantly solve it for them without any prior indication that that's possible. This isn't like a Data. Like, this happens in TNG a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something would happen. They need information, and Data would scan the Federation archives in his brain.
Even better, he's like, I anticipated this would be a problem, so I decided on the way there to
I did this.
everything.
But a lot of those episodes went like, "Hey, there's an anomaly in space, or we found, records of a ship. Can you search the computer?" And Data would do it, like, because he's faster than everyone else.
Yeah, he'd be done like that.
Blah, 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 blah. Yes, Captain, the starship Potemkin was in this area of space and this quadrant and mentioned this anomaly. You know what I mean? He would string that together, which without Data could be done by the computer, but would have been hard and would have taken a long time. But that was his character and his ability. Riker's kid is just a girl, and magically has has like a Chekhov's gun thing where she's just less like, "I got the answer for you. I don't want to make it too hard on the audience here." That kind of annoyed me from the terms of a writing perspective.
Well, it's about to get worse.
And so Rios and them show up. Aggie's now in a coma, and they beam up because they want to do that. We're going to beam up, and it's essentially Riker and Troy saying bye. It's writing them out completely of the show, saying, "This is our life. Peace out, losers."
That's the end of the episode, but that's not everything that...
That's not everything that happens, because right after that, we jump back to the Borg cube, and we actually get the first bit of like emotional resonance from Elnor that I've made it interesting, because he hides. He hides in a cubby or like a little underhang, and he puts his feet up like in a fetal position almost, and he's like scared. He's legitimately like, I am fucking way over my head.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first moment that he isn't just saying something like stupid, like, what's that? Or that looks fun. Or what about me? Don't I get to dress up? It's the first time he's like, oh shit, I have a sword and I'm going to fucking board a cube. You know what I mean? Like, oh fuck. And then he sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where he finds it. I don't even know if he had it because I'm pretty sure he didn't.
I thought Picard still had it.
I thought Picard had it, but hanging in front of his little cubby where he is, it's not even in his pocket. He sees it hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Is the beacon.
The Fenris Ranger key fob.
And I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was just like, what is that? Oh, is that maybe what
it actually has
sent him
Fenris
to find?
Ranger printed on it.
Yeah, I thought it was like a pass card to get into the main cube, and then you zoom in on it, and it says Fenris Rangers, like SS Fenris or something. And I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then it just ends with the cliffhanger of next week of 7 of 9 coming in and just fucking blasting Romulans. And I'm just like, oh, no. Yeah. Oh, don't do this. No.
I hate to break it to you, but they already introduced, blast them up 7 of 9 to...
7 of 9 is just Star Trek fucking Online. Rambo in space now. She's Rambo in space. They did this. They brought the war to me.
They drew first blood.
They drew first blood. This wasn't me. And then just shooting Romulans. It's just the greatest hits. And then at the end, I just wrote it's overall a bit bland. I would have liked this episode a lot more if they didn't deal with any of the space stuff.
Yeah.
A lot more. And there's also, I have a note here because I had to note it. When Picard first shows up on the planet and first talks to Riker, when he's in his house without him knowing.
Yeah.
And Riker says, you're in trouble, and Picard says, yeah, I'm in over my head. Riker activates the security system, right? That's a logical step. That's not something anyone else in this series would have done because everyone's fucking stupid. Like Riker's the first smart character, like, oh shit, you're in trouble. Security, lock us down.
Yeah.
Like it's the first normal thing someone has done. And it's from Riker. And this is why I love him. It's like, oh, he does a smart thing. Mm-hmm. And then he says, oh, it's Tel Shiar. And Riker goes, oh, fuck me. Cloaking
of course it would be.
Activate, cloaking detection grid activate. So he's like prepared. He's a smart person. But when he mentions like that he has a cloaking detection grid, Picard gives him a look and he's like, he mentions a random race. We've had trouble with so-and-so. And I could have sworn it was Xindi. I could have sworn he said it was like Xindi or like I was like, what is the Xindi, like the Suliban with him again from Enterprise?
It might have sounded similar, but no.
It's not because I put on the captions and it was like Zinkti or something with an X. Just some random nothing.
Were they supposed to be Zenkethi?
I don't know what something, but it was like, oh, it was stupid.
Because the Zenkethi don't have technology, so.
But it was like the only people for some reason that acted themselves were Troy and Riker.
Mm-hmm.
The people that this series isn't about were the only ones that acted like their own characters for some reason. And that annoyed me even more because that's more of actually what I would have wanted from a show like this. I want Picard to be Picard, not to be an asshole and old and just screaming that this is not what the Federation stands. I don't need you on a pulpit. I just want you to be Picard. And that's not what we're getting here. And then the Star Wars reference was stupid. There's just a lot of stupid. It just this episode, I didn't hate it, but it just felt cheap. It felt like it was writing to the masses and like, hey guys, cry now. Hey guys, feel sad now.
Do you remember the message I sent you?
Which one?
How much narrative convenience can one episode have?
Yes. Yeah. No, this one, I don't like it at all.
A lot.
I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it.
There were things I liked about it, but I don't like the episode itself.
If I could have had my way, I would have left out all of the space stuff except the beginning because they had to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the end stuff, like leave. I would have loved them to be on Nepenthe and then Picard not be able to get a hold of Rios and wonder, what are we going to do next? Right. have a double cliffhanger. Have them at the
This
dinner
is definitely
table.
all next week.
Yeah, have them all at the dinner table going, okay, we know, Soji, where your planet is. We don't know how to help you.
Figure it out.
I don't have the computer system. And the girl says, well, hey, what about, old Captain Ahab down the road? And they go, well, I mean, that's a place to start. And then
Old Man Jenkins.
yeah, and then have Rios in space at the end fighting to figure out how they're being tracked, and something happens. So leave everything on a clip. They just, I don't know. I don't like when a show gives you questions and then answers those questions within the same episode, or gives you an answer for them right away. There's no point, because what's the point of me as an
question?
Yeah, what's the point of me as an audience member if I'm going to stop thinking? And this is what I mean by writing to stupid people. Like, you're doing all the work for the audience, and that's not fun. That's entertaining for a popcorn flick, but there's no what's going to happen.
You remember that first episode where they introduced Moriarty?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off with
In the holodeck.
Data and Geordi going into the holodeck, and he instantly solves every single puzzle.
Yes.
Because they're all based off of books he's read.
Yeah.
Well, if you look into his pocket, you'll find the photograph.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's exactly like that.
It's exactly like
that. It's no fun.
It's no fun.
There's no threats. There's nothing to look forward to other than, well, who's 7 of 9's coming back. Let's come back next week. There's no
challenge.
Yeah, you're not doing any sort of work. And when you're not being asked to do something or to fill in blanks, then what are you doing watching? Just because it's Picard?
The only thing possibly worse is when you fill in the blanks and you do a better job than they do.
And this is why I can't stand, and I mentioned it earlier, but I can't stand like shows like Law and Order and stuff like that. And like any sort of police procedural since Dick Wolf came around, because they're all the same, right? It's essentially Star Trek Picard in real life. It's a start, middle, and end. Every episode ends with there's a happy ending. The police are going to do their job. They find a crime. The DA is going to press it, and they're going to solve it at the very end. And every single episode of every single season for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes, bad guy does something, bad guy gets caught. Bad guy does something, bad guy. You know what I mean? Everything is telegraphed for you. And that's what Star Trek Picard is doing. It's just lowest common denominator sort of storytelling, and it's bugging me.
There's no actual mystery.
There's no actual mystery, right? We know Data had kids. We know there's a bunch of them. We know the twins. There's like, what is there left for us to hang on to at this point with only a couple episodes left of the season, other than, well, we know he's going to get to the planet.
Well, how long is this supposed to be? Is it 10 or 12?
10. He's like, oh, well, we got to get there before the Romulans get there. That's
3 more episodes.
It's a race now for both of them. Who's going to get to the end first? That's all. There's no what ifs anymore. There's no like, oh shit, this might happen, or we don't know what's going to happen. We know exactly what's going to happen. And then 7 of 9 is going to come in every once in a while during however long this series lasts, just to shoot stuff. That's it.
Yeah.
And Guinan's coming back next season, so I bet you it's going to be a Q-related episode or some bullshit. Because remember,
if Q doesn't show up at the end of this, then yes.
Yeah, how does Q? How can you not have him show up during this arc of Jean-Luc Picard's story?
There's only one rule for Q, and that's that he trolls the shit out of Jean-Luc.
That's his whole. Yeah,
that's it.
The only reason humanity's alive is because he found Picard interesting.
If you fuck that up, then there is no hope for you.
And when things get weird, Q shows up to like fuck around with Picard, like when he got stabbed in the heart, or when his heart, gave out again. On that episode, Q is around, and he's like, "Oh, remember, he made him a science officer, and it was miserable." And he plays with them. So when Picard is literally on his last leg here, going nuts, this would be the perfect place for Q to like at least butt his head in for something
and fuck with him. Yeah.
And I bet you it's happening in season 2, because once you run out of this Data thing, you've given Picard nothing. You have given him nothing. Once the Data angle has been clipped. There is nothing left for him because you haven't given him anything other than its Data was his friend.
You want to know how bad I think it's going to be?
Mm,
I am not putting it past them to kill off Picard.
probably not. They already gave him that disease.
And then just have the show continue on.
Yeah, as something. No, I don't like where it's going. So overall, this episode, I just put it was a little bland. I don't like dead kids being used simply to pull at heartstrings or to serve a purpose other than the overall story. It's the women in refrigerator syndrome in comic books. Right? You have a comic book. How do you get emotional readers? Well, you kill their girlfriend or wife. And Gail Simone had coined that term because in Green Lantern back in the day, how do we make something impactful? Well, the bad guy kills your girlfriend and stuffs them in your fridge.
Yeah.
It's just that's what it feels like when a kid, like, I'm not saying characters can't die. I'm not saying significant others can't die, but there has to be something bigger than just, hey, feel bad now, or, oh, get real mad at the bad guy now because they did this. We didn't get this. So that's Star Trek Picard. Let us know in the comments what you thought. I know there's some of you out there. I do read the comments on the YouTube page. We've got, and last week was real fun because we had some people going, I don't agreeing. It's
Really?
weird when people agree with me for anything, but agreeing, saying, I don't even know what Star Trek is anymore. We've had some really nice comments, in-depth stuff. And then I just go, cruise to the CBS Facebook page and see these Picard ads, and everyone in the comments are just like, this is the greatest thing. Me and my wife love it. I'm just like, I feel so bad. I feel so bad. What has happened? What has happened?